Ashley had stopped by an hour earlier, stayed for lunch, then rushed off to her dental office for an afternoon appointment. 20 minutes after she left, her phone started ringing on my coffee table. Brandon was sitting right beside me on the couch, showing me pictures from his fishing trip. The phone screen lit up. Brandon was calling. But Brandon was right there. Confused, I picked it up and answered. A man's voice said, "Baby, I'm almost to the bank. Got those transfer codes you texted. Your mother-in-law won't know what hit her." My hand froze with the phone pressed against my ear. The voice kept talking, confident, casual. "Should have everything cleared out within the hour. Then we can." "Who is this?" I finally managed to say, my voice coming out strange and tight. Silence on the other end. Then, cautious now. "Who am I talking to?" "This is Annalie," I said, my heart hammering. "Brandon's mother, and my son is sitting right here next to me." The line went dead immediately. Brandon had been watching my face, and whatever he saw there made him sit up straight. "Mom? What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. Someone just called. A man. He thought he was talking to Ashley. He said something about transfer codes and the bank and... I couldn't finish. The words "your mother-in-law won't know what hit her" kept echoing in my head. Brandon took the phone from my trembling fingers and looked at the screen. His face went pale. "This says I called. But Mom, look." He pulled his own phone from his pocket and held it up next to Ashley's. "That's not my number." I leaned closer. He was right. The incoming call on Ashley's phone showed Brandon as the contact name, but the actual phone number was completely different from the one on Brandon's phone. "Someone put a fake contact in her phone," Brandon said slowly, his voice getting harder with each word. "They're pretending to be me." We both stared at each other for a long moment, the full implications sinking in. Then Brandon started scrolling through Ashley's phone, his jaw clenching tighter with each swipe. "Mom, look at this." He turned the screen toward me. Text messages, dozens of them, supposedly from Brandon to Ashley. My stomach dropped as I read them. "Hey babe, Mom's having trouble with her online banking. Can you help me get her account info so I can fix it for her? Thanks for those numbers. She's so embarrassed about not understanding technology. You're sweet to help. One more thing. Can you send me those verification codes when they come through? Mom's having trouble receiving texts on her old phone." Ashley's responses were kind, helpful, everything you'd expect from a daughter-in-law trying to assist her husband's mother. She'd sent account numbers, routing numbers, security codes. "She thought she was helping you help me," I whispered. "Oh my God, Brandon." He was already calling Ashley, his free hand clenched into a fist. She answered on the second ring, her voice bright. "Hey, did Annalie find my phone? I've been lost without it." "You need to come back here right now," Brandon said, his voice so tight it didn't even sound like him. "What? Why?" "I'm in the middle of a cleaning. I have a patient in the chair. Ashley. Now." Something in his tone must have gotten through because she said, Okay, I'll be there in 15 minutes. Those 15 minutes felt like hours. I made tea neither of us drank. Brandon paced my living room like a caged animal. I kept looking at Ashley's phone sitting on my coffee table like it was a bomb that might go off again. When Ashley finally rushed through my front door, her scrubs still on, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, she looked scared. "What happened? Is someone hurt?" Brandon held up her phone. "Did you send someone my mother's financial information?" Ashley's face went from worried to confused to horrified in about 3 seconds. "What? No, I would never." "Wait, what are you talking about?" We showed her everything, the fake contact, the text messages, her responses. With each revelation, the color drained from her face until she looked gray. "But that is you," she kept saying, pointing at the messages. "You texted me from this number weeks ago. You said you got a new work phone, that the company upgraded everyone. We've been texting from this number for over a month. Ashley, I never got a new phone. That's not me. Someone has been impersonating me, getting information from you, and..." Brandon didn't finish. He was already dialing our bank. He put it on speaker. After navigating through the automated system, a pleasant woman's voice came on. "Hillside Regional Bank, this is Carmen speaking. How can I help you today? This is Brandon Hayes. I need to check on my mother's account. Annalee Hayes. One moment, please. We heard typing. Yes, Mr. Hayes. How can I help you with that account? Has there been any unusual activity today? More typing. Then a pause that made my blood run cold. Well, sir, we did process a large wire transfer about 40 minutes ago. $50,000 from the savings account to an external account. Is there a problem? The room spun. I grabbed the arm of the couch to steady myself. $50,000. That was nearly everything I had left after my husband died 3 years ago. My safety net. My security. I authorized nothing, I heard myself say, though my voice sounded far away. I've been home all afternoon. I didn't make any transfer. Ma'am. I'm looking at the transaction notes now. Our records show you came into the Maple Street branch in person at 2:15 this afternoon with proper identification and requested the wire transfer yourself. That's impossible, I said. Louder now. I've been here with my son since noon. We had lunch together. I never left my house. The bank representative's voice became more formal, more careful. Ma'am, the transaction was processed according to our security protocols. The individual presented a valid driver's license, debit card, and correctly answered all security questions, including your mother's maiden name and the street you grew up on. Brandon's face had gone from pale to red. We're coming down there right now. Don't process anything else from any of these accounts. We all piled into Brandon's truck, Ashley climbing into the back seat without a word. I caught her eyes in the rearview mirror. She'd been crying silently, mascara running down her cheeks. The Maple Street branch was only 10 minutes away, a small building with cream-colored walls and fake plants in the lobby. The manager, a thin man in his 40s named Dennis Patterson, met us in his office. His expression shifted from professional courtesy to concern as Brandon explained what happened. I need to see your security footage, Brandon said, from 2:15 this afternoon. Mr. Patterson hesitated. That's highly irregular. Typically, we'd need a police report first. My mother's life savings were just stolen by someone impersonating her. Show us the footage. Something in Brandon's voice, or maybe the desperation in my face, made Mr. Patterson nod. He turned his computer monitor so we could all see and pulled up the video files. The footage was grainy, but clear enough. At exactly 2:13 p.m., a woman entered the bank. She was approximately my height, my build, wearing dark slacks and a cardigan similar to ones I owned. But what made my skin crawl was the gray wig, styled almost exactly like my short hair, and the large sunglasses that covered half her face. We watched her approach a teller, present documents, get directed to a desk. The transaction took less than 10 minutes. She knew exactly what she was doing. No hesitation, no nervousness. That's not me, I said, though obviously it wasn't. But I needed to say it anyway. I can see that, Mrs. Hayes, Mr. Patterson said gently. But she had your driver's license, your debit card. She knew your mother's maiden name was Dorothy. She knew you grew up on Sycamore Street in Fort Worth. She knew your first pet's name was Charlie. How? I whispered. How did she know all of that? Ashley made a small sound in the back of her throat. We all turned to look at her. She was staring at her phone, at the text messages. I told him. I told whoever was pretending to be Brandon. He asked me these questions, said he was setting up a surprise retirement party for you, wanted to make sure he got all the details right. I thought it was sweet. She started crying harder. I'm so sorry. I thought I was helping. I thought he was Brandon. I never would have. Oh God, Annalee, I'm so sorry. I wanted to comfort her, but I was too numb. Everything felt unreal. Like this was happening to someone else. Where did the money go? Brandon asked Mr. Patterson. Offshore account, Bahamas. The account was closed 20 minutes after the transfer completed. I'm sorry, but the money is gone. We filed a police report at the station next door to the bank. A young officer took our statements, his expression sympathetic, but not particularly hopeful. Identity theft rings are getting more sophisticated every year, he said. They target multiple family members, gather information over time, strike fast, and disappear. We'll investigate, but I want to be honest with you, the recovery rate on these cases is low. By the time we got back to my house, It was nearly dark. Ashley and Brandon came inside with me, neither of them wanting to leave me alone. We sat around my kitchen table, the same table where we'd had lunch just hours ago, back when the worst thing I had to worry about was whether my tomato plants needed watering. "We should check your documents," Brandon said finally. "If someone got your driver's license, they must have had access to your house." "My garage. I kept important papers in a file cabinet out there, had for years." We went out together, and immediately I saw it. The lock on the cabinet was scratched, the metal bent slightly. I'd noticed it a few weeks ago, thought maybe I'd just shut it too hard, hadn't really considered that someone had broken in. Brandon pulled open the drawer. Everything was still there. Birth certificate, social security card, copy of my passport. But Ashley, who worked with documents all day at the dental office, pointed out what we'd missed. "Look at the edges, these have been photographed. See how they're not quite lined up the same way? Someone took pictures of everything, then put it all back so you wouldn't notice." That night, after Brandon changed all my locks and Ashley helped me call the credit bureaus to freeze my accounts, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Someone had been in my house, had gone through my personal things, had studied my life carefully enough to steal my identity, and I'd never even known. The violation felt almost worse than the money. The next morning, I woke up to Brandon and Ashley at my door, at 7 a.m., both of them looking like they hadn't slept. Ashley had her laptop, Brandon had a notepad, and they'd clearly been up all night researching identity theft recovery. Over the next 3 days, our lives became a blur of phone calls, police reports, and paperwork. We contacted the 3 credit bureaus, filed fraud alerts, closed and reopened bank accounts, changed passwords on every online account I had. Brandon installed a security system in my house that would have made Fort Knox jealous. Detective Marshall Hayes from the Fraud Division was assigned to our case on day 2. He was in his mid-40s, broad-shouldered with graying hair at his temples and eyes that seemed to take in everything. He spent 2 hours at my house, taking detailed statements from all 3 of us, examining the file cabinet in the garage, asking questions that felt both thorough and somehow invasive. "These rings are organized," he told us, sitting at my kitchen table with his notepad. "They target families, hit multiple members before anyone realizes what's happening. By the time you catch on, they've moved on to the next victims." "So you're saying there's no chance of getting the money back?" I said. "It wasn't really a question. I'm saying it's unlikely, but we'll investigate, see if we can find patterns, connections." He looked at Ashley. "You said this person texted you pretending to be your husband for over a month?" Ashley nodded miserably. She'd barely left my side since this started, calling in sick to work, desperate to somehow make up for unknowingly helping the thieves. 6 weeks, I think, maybe more. "I'll need your phone. We'll send it to our tech department, see if they can trace anything." On the 3rd day after the theft, I was in my backyard trying to do something normal, like water my plants, when Brandon called. I could hear it in his voice immediately. Something else had happened. "Mom, someone withdrew $15,000 from my checking account an hour ago." I dropped the hose. Water pooled around my feet, soaking into the grass, but I didn't move. "How?" "Branch withdrawal. Different location, across town on Riverside." "I just got the alert." His voice was shaking. "I was at work. I have witnesses, timestamps, everything. But someone walked into that bank with my ID and took my money." By the time I drove to meet him at the bank, Detective Hayes was already there. The security footage showed a young woman with dark hair and a ponytail, wearing a casual blouse and jeans, similar to what Ashley often wore. She'd presented Brandon's ID, filled out a withdrawal slip, walked out with $15,000 in cash. Ashley was at her dental office during the withdrawal, confirmed by her boss, her co-workers, 6 patients. But the resemblance was deliberate. Whoever these people were, they were now targeting Brandon and Ashley too. "This isn't random," Detective Hayes said, studying the footage. "This is targeted, coordinated. They're hitting your whole family." That evening, exhausted and terrified, I was alone in my house. Brandon and Ashley had gone back to their place to check their own security, change their locks, go through their documents. I was making tea, trying to calm my nerves, when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But what if it was the bank, or Detective Hayes, or some other urgent call about this nightmare. Hello? Annalee. A woman's voice, cold and amused, like she was enjoying a private joke. This is just the beginning. My blood went cold. Who is this? You should have been nicer to your daughter-in-law, maybe treated her like real family instead of an outsider. Did you really think I wouldn't notice how you kept her at arm's length? The polite distance? The way you never quite warmed up to her? I don't know what you're talking about. Who are you? Someone who sees everything. Someone who knows that perfect little family of yours isn't so perfect after all. And now you're going to pay for it. All of you. Why are you doing this? What do you want? Laughter, brittle and sharp. I already got what I wanted. Your money, your son's money. But that's just the start. Before I'm done, you won't have anything left. Not your money, not your family, not your precious reputation. Nothing. Please, I heard myself say. Please, if you want more money. Oh, Annalee, this was never just about money. The line went dead. I stood in my kitchen, phone clutched in my shaking hand, and realized something that made my legs go weak. This wasn't a random crime. This was personal. Someone was targeting us deliberately. Someone who knew us, who'd watched us closely enough to know the dynamics of our family relationships. Someone who thought I deserved to be punished. When I called Detective Hayes to report the threatening call, his response was less sympathetic than I'd expected. These criminals often make calls to intimidate victims. Try not to let it get to you. The number was probably a burner phone. Nothing we can trace. But that's not what bothered me. What bothered me was that the woman was right. I had kept Ashley at a distance. Not intentionally cruel, but never quite welcoming her fully into the family. After my husband died, I'd built walls around my heart, terrified of loving and losing again. Ashley had tried so hard to connect with me, and I'd responded with polite coolness. Had I somehow caused this? Over the next week, the attacks continued like a relentless storm. Credit cards opened in all our names, charges at stores across Texas, online purchases shipped to addresses we'd never heard of. Our credit scores, once solid, plummeted. I couldn't pay my mortgage. My accounts were still frozen during the investigation, the bank unwilling to release funds until they sorted out what was legitimate and what was fraud. Brandon tried to help financially, but his accounts were also restricted, and Ashley's small savings were gone, drained by whoever was systematically destroying our lives. The stress was breaking us. I saw it in Brandon's face, new lines appearing around his eyes. Ashley looked exhausted, shadows under her eyes, her normally cheerful demeanor replaced with quiet anxiety. They'd started arguing, small spats that escalated quickly, about money, about whose fault this was, about what they should have noticed sooner. If you'd been warmer to her, maybe she would have felt comfortable telling you about those texts immediately, instead of trying to be helpful, Ashley said one night when they were at my house. The words came out sharper than I think she meant them. That's not fair, Brandon shot back. My mom didn't do anything wrong. I didn't say she did. I'm just saying that maybe if we'd all communicated better. So now you're blaming my mother for this? I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just saying that families who actually talk to each other might have caught this sooner. They'd left that night barely speaking to each other, and I'd cried myself to sleep. Not just because of the money, but because I was watching them tear each other apart, and knowing that woman on the phone had been right. I had contributed to this by keeping emotional distance. One afternoon, Ashley came over alone. She was helping me file insurance claims, trying to document everything we'd lost. She was on my computer, typing up a timeline of events, when she suddenly went very still. Annalee? When's the last time you used your computer? This morning. Why? I'm looking at your browser history. Her voice had gone quiet in a way that made my stomach knot. There are searches here for how to fake identity documents, how to make untraceable money transfers, how to frame someone for fraud. What? I came around to look at the screen. She was right. The searches were there, dated over the past 2 months, all from my user account. I never searched for any of that. Ashley, I swear. I believe you, she said quickly. But I saw the uncertainty in her eyes. When Detective Hayes came by later that day to check on another lead, Ashley mentioned the browser history. His expression shifted, became more guarded. He asked to see my computer. Within an hour, he'd found malware, spyware, programs I didn't understand, but he'd also found something else. Emails sent from my account to offshore banking services. Documents in my printer history showing fake IDs that I'd never printed. Bank transfer instructions I'd never written. "Mrs. Hayes," Detective Hayes said, his voice taking on a different tone, more formal, "I need to ask you something directly. Is it possible you're experiencing any memory issues? Confusion? Periods where you lose track of time?" The implication hit me like a slap. "You think I did this? You think I stole my own money?" I've seen cases where elderly individuals experience early onset dementia, create situations they later don't remember. The confusion can lead to, "I'm 67 years old, not senile." My voice rose. "Someone planted this evidence, can't you see that?" But I could see it in his face. He was skeptical. And when I looked at Brandon, I saw doubt there too. Just a flicker, quickly hidden, but enough to break my heart. "Detective," Ashley said slowly, "what if someone gained remote access to Annalie's computer? Couldn't they have done all this?" Possibly. But these searches were done at times when Mrs. Hayes was home alone, according to her own statements. And the IP address traces back to this house, this network. 2 days later, the bank made a discovery that shattered what little hope I had left. An offshore account in my name, opened 3 months ago, containing $30,000 of the stolen money. Account documents showed my signature, my information, my social security number. I had no memory of opening any such account. Detective Hayes brought me into the police station for formal questioning. "I should get a lawyer," he said, "but I couldn't afford one. All my money was gone or frozen." So I sat in that sterile interview room and insisted, over and over, that I was innocent. "Then explain," Hayes said, spreading documents across the table, "how your computer, your printer, your home network, and now your offshore bank account are all connected to these crimes." "I can't explain it," I said, my voice breaking, "because I didn't do it. Someone is framing me. Can't you see that?" But I could see he didn't believe me. The evidence was too overwhelming, too interconnected. Every digital trail pointed back to me. That night, Brandon called. "Mom, Ashley and I have been talking. We think maybe you need help, professional help, maybe someone to evaluate." "You think I'm losing my mind," I said flatly. "I think something's wrong, and I'm scared." "The evidence, Mom, it all points to you. Either you did this, or someone is setting you up so perfectly that we can't tell the difference. And if it's the second thing, then we're dealing with someone who's been planning this for months, who knows everything about us, who's so far ahead that we can't catch up. So you're giving up on me?" "No, God, no. But Ashley and I need some space, just to think, to figure out what's real." "Space," I repeated. The word felt hollow. "Just for a few days, please understand." But I didn't understand. My son, who I'd raised alone after his father died, who I'd sacrificed everything for, was walking away because he couldn't tell if his own mother was a criminal or a victim. After he hung up, I sat in the dark living room of the house that no longer felt safe, and wondered how my life had fallen apart so completely in just 2 weeks. The lawsuit came on a Tuesday morning. A process server in a cheap suit handed me the papers with an apologetic expression, then hurried back to his car as if whatever I had might be contagious. Brandon and Ashley were suing me. Civil lawsuit for financial elder abuse, fraud, and manipulation. They were seeking damages of $150,000, the total of what had been stolen from all of us combined. I read the complaint with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. It claimed I'd manipulated Ashley into providing financial information under false pretenses. That I'd orchestrated an elaborate scheme to steal from my own family. That I'd created a cover story involving identity theft to avoid responsibility when caught. The attached evidence made my stomach turn. Screenshots of the browser history. The offshore account statements. Testimony from Detective Hayes describing his suspicions. A statement from the bank about my supposed visit. Medical opinions from a psychologist I'd never met, suggesting I showed signs of cognitive decline and might be incompetent to manage my own affairs. They were seeking guardianship. Legal control over my life, my decisions, my remaining assets. At the bottom of the complaint was a request for a restraining order. Brandon and Ashley wanted the court to forbid me from contacting them directly, to stay at least 200 feet away from both of them. My own son was treating me like a dangerous criminal. I tried calling him. The phone rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. "Brandon, please. How could you do this? I'm your mother. I would never hurt you or Ashley. Please, just call me back. Let me explain." My voice broke. "Please." He never called back. I contacted 3 lawyers over the next 2 days. All 3 declined to take my case. One was blunt about it. "Ma'am, the evidence against you is substantial. You'd be better off trying to settle, maybe getting a psychiatric evaluation that could help explain your actions. Fighting this will only make things worse." "I didn't do anything wrong," I told him. "Then you're going to need a very expensive lawyer, and based on your financial situation, you can't afford one. I'm sorry." The isolation closed in like a vice. My best friend from church, Paulette, called less frequently. When we did talk, her voice was careful, cautious, like she was speaking to someone fragile who might break. "Are you taking care of yourself, Annalee? Are you eating? Sleeping?" Translation: "Are you losing your mind?" My neighbor across the street, Mrs. Carson, who used to wave cheerfully every morning when we got our newspapers, now averted her eyes, pretended not to see me. The whispers had started. Small town, big gossip. Everyone knew. Detective Hayes called on Thursday. "Mrs. Hayes, we found some additional evidence. I need you to come down to the station." My heart sank. "What evidence?" "I'd prefer to discuss it in person." At the station, he showed me bank records. I'd withdrawn $5,000 in cash 3 weeks before the identity theft began. I remembered that withdrawal. I'd needed to pay a contractor for roof repairs. I'd written him a check instead, kept the cash in my safe at home for emergencies. "Where's that cash now?" Hayes asked. "In my safe." Or it was. I hadn't checked recently. We went to my house together. I opened the safe with shaking fingers. The cash was gone. "Someone took it," I said. "Someone broke in and... or you used it to hire accomplices." Hayes's voice was flat, unmoved by my distress. "We spoke to your contractor, Mr. Gerald Thompson. He confirms you paid him by check. He also said you seemed confused during his visit, asked him the same questions multiple times, had trouble following the conversation." "That's not true. He's lying, or misremembering, or..." "Multiple witnesses are placing you at locations during times you claim you were elsewhere. Evidence is mounting. The DA's office is considering formal charges. Fraud, identity theft, computer crimes, elder abuse. I'm the victim here." "Then help me understand the evidence, Mrs. Hayes, because right now, everything points to you." The restraining order was approved by a judge that Friday. I received the official notice in the mail. Brandon Hayes and Ashley Hayes were granted protection from Annalee Hayes. I was forbidden from contacting them, from going within 200 feet of their home or workplaces. My own son had legally declared me a threat. Sunday, I didn't go to church, couldn't face it. But Pastor Williams called. His voice was kind but firm. "Annalee, the board and I have been discussing the situation. We think it would be best if you took a break from your volunteer work with the children's program, just until this legal matter is resolved. You think I'm dangerous? I think the children's parents are concerned, and I have to respect that. I'm sorry." Monday, the local news picked up the story. Someone had tipped them off, probably someone at the police station or the courthouse. The story ran on the evening news and online. Local grandmother, accused of defrauding own family in elaborate scheme. They used my driver's license photo, showed my house, my address. The reporter spoke in that serious, concerned voice they use for stories about criminals. Annalee Hayes, 67, stands accused of stealing over $65,000 from her son and daughter-in-law through an elaborate identity theft scheme. Authorities say Hayes may have been planning the fraud for months. My phone started ringing. Old acquaintances, distant relatives, people I hadn't spoken to in years. Some were concerned, asking if I needed help. Most were judgment wrapped in false concern. "Annalee, we heard the news. Are you getting the help you need? Have you seen a doctor?" I stopped answering. Wednesday, I had to go to the grocery store. I'd been putting it off, but I had no food left in the house. I made the trip at 6 in the morning, hoping to avoid people. But the store was never truly empty. I was in the cereal aisle when I heard the whispers, 2 women from my church. I'd known them for 15 years. That's her. The one who stole from her own family. I always thought there was something off about her. Too perfect, you know? Like she was hiding something. I abandoned my cart and left. At home, I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. I'd lost weight, hadn't noticed how much until now. My clothes hung loose, dark circles under my eyes, hair unwashed. I looked like someone losing her mind. Maybe I was. That night, I lay in bed and thought about giving up. Just signing whatever papers they wanted, admitting to crimes I didn't commit, accepting whatever consequences would make this nightmare end. Prison might be easier than this. At least in prison, you know you're supposed to be there. But I hadn't done anything wrong. And somewhere, someone was laughing at how perfectly they'd destroyed my life. The mortgage company sent a foreclosure notice. I was 3 months behind on payments. My accounts were frozen. I had no access to money. Couldn't make payments even if I wanted to. The house where I'd lived for 32 years, where I'd raised Brandon, where every room held memories of my late husband, would be taken from me in 90 days. I had nothing left to lose. It was 2 in the morning on a sleepless night when I found myself going through old photo albums, trying to remember who I used to be before this nightmare. Pictures of Brandon's childhood, his high school graduation, his wedding to Ashley 4 years ago. I paused on the wedding photos. Ashley looked beautiful, radiant. Brandon looked happier than I'd ever seen him. I was in several pictures, smiling, wearing the lavender dress I'd bought special for the occasion, but looking at the photos now, I could see it, the slight distance in my posture. The polite smile that didn't quite reach my eyes, the way I stood just slightly apart from Ashley's family instead of mingling naturally. I'd been keeping her at arm's length even then. In one photo, Ashley was talking to a woman I didn't recognize, brunette, stylish, big smile. I stared at the photo, something tugging at my memory. Then it hit me. 4 months ago, Ashley had introduced me to someone, a friend from her book club, she'd said. The woman's name was Diane. She'd come to my house once, maybe twice. We'd had coffee. She'd been friendly, curious, asking lots of questions about my life. What bank do you use, Annalie? Do you handle your finances online? When do you usually go out during the week? Do you have a security system? At the time, I'd thought she was just making conversation, maybe a little lonely and looking for connection. Now those questions felt sinister. I grabbed my phone, started scrolling through Ashley's social media. She'd blocked me after the restraining order, but her posts were public. I went back months, looking for any mention of Diane. There, 6 months ago, a selfie Ashley had posted. Girls' lunch with my favorite people, 3 women at a restaurant table. One of them was Diane. I zoomed in on the photo. Diane was wearing a necklace, a distinctive silver locket. I'd seen that locket before, but where? I went to my garage, found the box of items Detective Hayes had given me copies of, crime scene photos from when they'd documented the break-in at my file cabinet. In one photo, partially visible on my driveway, there was a car. Just the side mirror and a sliver of the driver's window. I used my phone to enlarge the image as much as possible. Through the window, barely visible, a hand on the steering wheel, wearing rings. And hanging from the rearview mirror, catching the light, a silver locket. Someone had been at my house when those photos were taken. Someone who knew Ashley. Someone who wore that distinctive locket. Diane. But who was Diane really? And how did she connect to all of this? I couldn't go to Detective Hayes. He thought I was guilty. I couldn't contact Brandon or Ashley, but I could investigate on my own. I had $817 left. Cash I'd hidden in a coffee can in my kitchen, emergency money the thieves hadn't found. It was all I had in the world. I used it to hire a private investigator. Garrett Price worked out of a cramped office above a nail salon on the east side of town. He was in his 60s, gray beard, tired eyes, but when I told him my story and showed him the photos of Diane, something sparked in his expression. The cops think you're guilty? Everyone thinks I'm guilty. But you're not. It wasn't a question. I met his eyes. No, I'm not. Then, Let's find out who is. 4 days later, Garrett called. I found her. Your friend Diane doesn't exist. At least, not under that name. What do you mean? The name's fake. But I ran the photos you gave me through facial recognition software, legal gray area, but effective. Her real name is Brenda Sullivan. She's got a record. Identity theft, fraud, served 3 years in federal prison, released 18 months ago. My heart was pounding. Why would she target us? That's where it gets interesting. I did some digging into her background. Annalee, Brenda Sullivan, is Ashley's half-sister. The room seemed to tilt. What? Ashley's father, Robert, was married before he met Ashley's mother, had a daughter with his first wife. That daughter is Brenda. The first marriage ended ugly. Robert was caught embezzling from his own construction business, nearly destroyed them financially. His first wife divorced him, got almost nothing. Brenda grew up poor, while Robert rebuilt his life, married Ashley's mother, started over clean. Ashley never mentioned having a half-sister. According to records I found, Robert cut off all contact with his first family, refused child support beyond the bare minimum. Remarried, had Ashley, became successful in commercial real estate. Built the life he should have had with Brenda, but with his new family instead. I felt sick. So Brenda wants revenge. More than that. I found her prison psych evaluation. She has a pattern of targeting what she calls replacement families, people who got the life she thinks she deserved. She served time for ruining a stepmother's credit, destroying her finances, trying to drive the woman to suicide. Does Ashley know that Brenda is her sister? I don't know. But look at this. Garrett showed me more documents. Ashley's bank records, obtained through methods I decided not to ask about. Over the past 2 months, Ashley had been depositing cash. $500 here, $1,000 there, total of about $8,000. Ashley's in on it, I whispered. Maybe. Or maybe Brenda is paying her for something. Or threatening her. I need to show this to the police. Garrett's expression turned grim. There's something else. I did a background check on Detective Marshall Hayes. He's been investigated twice by Internal Affairs for evidence tampering. Both times cleared, but the complaints were serious. His ex-wife has restraining orders against him. Her social media is full of warnings about him, calling him corrupt. You think Hayes is involved? I think you need to be very careful who you trust in this. The next morning, I was preparing to contact the FBI. Garrett had given me the name of an agent his nephew worked with. Someone outside the local department who might actually listen. I was organizing all the evidence into a folder when my doorbell rang at 6 a.m. Detective Marshall Hayes stood on my porch with 2 uniformed officers. He held up a warrant. Annalee Hayes, you're under arrest for obstruction of justice, conspiracy to commit fraud, and solicitation of illegal access to financial records. What? No, Someone reported that you hired a private investigator to illegally obtain bank records. That's a federal crime, Mrs. Hayes. They handcuffed me, read me my rights, led me out of my house in front of my neighbors, who watched from windows and porches. Mrs. Carson had her phone out, recording video. At the police station, I was booked, fingerprinted, photographed, put in a holding cell with 3 other women awaiting arraignment. One of them, a woman in her 40s with hard eyes and a wrinkled business suit, asked what I was in for. I told her. Everything. The identity theft, the frame job, Detective Hayes, all of it. Her expression changed. Hayes? Detective Marshall Hayes? You know him? That man is dirty as they come. Planted evidence in my case, falsified reports. Everyone knows it, but Internal Affairs protects him. I was a paralegal before he destroyed my life. Took me 2 years to prove my innocence, and by then I'd lost everything. Did he have a girlfriend? Someone working with him? The woman thought for a moment. I heard he was seeing someone. Brunette, 30s. Real cold eyes. Someone said she was the brains, he was just the muscle. But I never got a name. That description fit Brenda. My bail hearing was the next morning. I had no lawyer. The public defender assigned to me was a kid fresh out of law school who looked more nervous than I felt. He advised me to plead guilty, take a deal. I'm innocent, I told him. The evidence says otherwise. The judge was a woman in her late 50s named Helena Ford. She had sharp eyes and an expression that suggested she'd heard every lie and excuse imaginable. I knew I had one chance to make her understand. When my turn came, I stood up. The public defender tried to speak, but I cut him off. "Your Honor, may I address the court?" Judge Ford looked surprised but nodded. "Go ahead, Mrs. Hayes. I know how this looks. I know the evidence against me appears overwhelming. But I'm being framed by someone who's very good at what they do. Her name is Brenda Sullivan. She's a convicted identity thief who's been released from federal prison. She's also my daughter-in-law's half-sister, though I don't know if my daughter-in-law knows that. Brenda has been systematically destroying my life, my family, and my finances. And I believe Detective Marshall Hayes is helping her." The courtroom went very quiet. "That's quite an accusation, Mrs. Hayes," Judge Ford said. "I have evidence. Photos, records, a background check. A private investigator helped me find it. Yes, some of his methods may have been questionable, but he found the truth. I can prove Detective Hayes has been investigated for corruption. I can prove Brenda Sullivan exists, has a criminal record, and has been posing as someone else to get close to my family. I'm not crazy. I'm not senile. I'm a victim being framed by criminals, one of whom is wearing a badge." Judge Ford studied me for a long moment. Then she looked at the prosecutor. "Do we have Detective Hayes in the building?" "Yes, Your Honor. He's the investigating officer. Bring him in." Hayes entered, confident, professional in a dark suit. But when Judge Ford asked him directly about the internal affairs investigations, his expression tightened. "Those were dismissed, Your Honor. False accusations from criminals trying to discredit me." "And what's your connection to a Brenda Sullivan?" "I don't know anyone by that name." Judge Ford set bail at $10,000. Much less than the prosecutor wanted, much more than I could afford. But my friend Paulette, bless her heart, used her house as collateral to post it. As I was being released, Judge Ford called me aside. "Mrs. Hayes, I don't know if you're innocent or guilty, but something about this case doesn't sit right. You have 2 weeks to get your evidence together. Make it count." I walked out of that courthouse into the bright Texas sun, knowing I had one shot. One chance to prove the truth, before I went to prison for crimes I didn't commit. And I knew exactly what I had to do. Freedom felt strange after a night in jail. Everything looked the same, but the world had shifted. I was a criminal in everyone's eyes. The question was whether I could become innocent again before the system crushed me completely. Garrett met me at a diner outside of town, somewhere we were unlikely to run into anyone we knew. Over coffee that tasted like burnt plastic, we planned. "We need real proof," Garrett said. "Something that ties Hayes and Brenda together. Something that can't be explained away." "How?" "We set a trap. Give them something they can't resist." I thought about what Brenda had said on the phone. This was about more than money. She wanted to destroy me completely, punish me for sins she thought I'd committed against Ashley. She wanted me to suffer. "What if she thought there was more money to take?" I said slowly. Garrett's eyes sharpened. "What do you mean?" "My late husband had a life insurance policy. It paid out when he died 3 years ago. That's where most of my savings came from. What if there was another policy? One I'd forgotten about? Is there? No. But what if people thought there was?" We contacted a reporter I'd gone to high school with, someone I trusted. I told her I wanted to plant a story. She was skeptical at first, until I explained everything. Then she was in. The article ran 2 days later, online and in the local paper. Embattled grandmother receives surprise windfall amid legal troubles. Forgotten insurance policy pays out $300,000. The story was careful, making it seem like the insurance company had only just discovered the old policy, that I'd been notified this week. It mentioned that, despite my legal problems, the money couldn't be touched because it was a separate asset, though I could access it once the holds on my other accounts were lifted. It was all lies. But it was good bait. While we waited to see if anyone would bite, I did something I should have done weeks ago. Through Paulette's nephew, I contacted the FBI. Agent Tim Walters specialized in police corruption. He'd been quietly building a case against Detective Hayes for months, but needed concrete evidence. I gave him everything Garrett had found: Brenda's identity and record, Ashley's bank deposits. The connection between Brenda and Ashley through their father, Hayes's history of investigations. The pattern of how evidence had been planted on my computer. It's not enough yet, Agent Walters said. It's circumstantial. We need to catch them in the act. That's what we're trying to do. Then we'll provide backup. But Mrs. Hayes, you understand this is dangerous? If Hayes and this Brenda Sullivan realize what you're doing, they've already taken everything from me, except my life. I'm not afraid anymore. 3 days after the article ran, I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. A pleasant voice asked me to verify my social security number for insurance purposes. I knew immediately it was them. The scammers, trying to get more information. I played along, gave them false information that sounded real, confirmed that, yes, I'd received notice of the policy, the money should be available within a week. That night, at 11:30, my home security system alarm went off. Someone was trying to break in through the back door. I was ready. The FBI had set up surveillance outside, watching, waiting. I was wearing a wire. Cameras had been installed throughout my house, hidden in smoke detectors and picture frames. I heard the back door open. Footsteps in my kitchen. 2 people, from the sound of it. My bedroom door opened. I'd left it unlocked deliberately. In the darkness, I could see 2 figures. One went straight to my computer. The other started going through my desk drawers. I waited until they were both fully occupied, then hit the light switch. Brenda Sullivan stood by my computer, flash drive in hand. Detective Marshall Hayes was rifling through my files. They both froze, caught like animals in headlights. "Hello, Brenda," I said. "Or should I call you Diane?" Her face twisted with rage. "You stupid old woman. FBI, don't move." Agent Walters and 3 other agents burst through my bedroom door, weapons drawn. Hayes tried to run, actually shoved past me, but agents were coming in through every entrance. Within seconds, both of them were on the floor, being handcuffed. Brenda was screaming, thrashing. "You don't understand. She deserved this. She treated Ashley like trash. She kept her at a distance, made her feel like she wasn't good enough. Someone had to make her pay." "Brenda, shut up!" Hayes yelled, but it was too late. She was confessing to everything, her rage overriding any sense of self-preservation. The agents pulled them to their feet. "Read them their rights." As they were being let out, Brenda looked at me with such hatred it was almost physical. "You think this fixes anything? You think your son will forgive you?" I told Ashley what you really thought of her. I showed her how you never really wanted her in your family. "Even if I go to prison, I destroyed you. Your family will never be the same." But she was wrong. Because standing in my doorway, having been brought by the FBI as witnesses, were Brandon and Ashley. They'd heard everything. The next 3 weeks were a blur of statements, depositions, and debriefings. The full scope of Brenda and Hayes's operation unraveled like a rotten thread being pulled. They'd been working together for over a year, targeting families across Texas. My family was just the latest in a long line of victims. Under interrogation, Brenda finally told the whole story. She'd learned about Ashley 5 years ago, discovered that her father's second family was living the life that should have been hers. She'd been planning revenge ever since, studying them from a distance, learning their patterns and relationships. When she got out of prison 18 months ago, she'd looked up her old cellmate's boyfriend, a corrupt cop named Marshall Hayes. They became partners in crime and in bed. Brenda had deliberately befriended Ashley at a coffee shop, pretending to be a lonely transplant to Dallas looking for book club recommendations. Over months, she'd built trust, learning everything about the family dynamics. She'd noticed immediately how I kept Ashley at emotional distance and decided to use it. The plan was brilliant in its cruelty. Frame me using Ashley's innocent help, steal enough money to hurt us badly but not enough to trigger major federal investigations initially, then watch as the family tore itself apart from the inside. Hayes had ensured the investigation stayed local, under his control. He'd planted additional evidence on my computer during one of his visits to my house. He'd coached witnesses to say I seemed confused. He'd made sure every trail pointed back to me. What they hadn't counted on was me fighting back. Most of their victims gave up, took plea deals, or died by suicide before the truth came out. They'd assumed a 67-year-old widow would break under pressure. They'd assumed wrong. The morning after their arrest, Brandon called me. I heard him crying before he said a word. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." "I know, honey. I know. I should have believed you. I should have known you'd never hurt us. But the evidence was so." "I understand. It looked bad. It was meant to look bad. Can you forgive me?" I thought about that. About the past month of hell, of being abandoned by my son when I needed him most, of the doubt I'd seen in his eyes. "Yes," I said finally, "but it's going to take time. For both of us." Ashley came to see me the next day. She looked terrible, thin, pale, her eyes red from crying. "I didn't know," she said immediately, standing in my doorway like she was afraid to come in, "about Brenda being my half-sister. My father never told me. When she revealed the truth, she used it to manipulate me. She said if I told anyone, she'd hurt Brandon. She had photos of him at work, at the gym, everywhere he went. She said she had people watching him. That's why you were depositing cash. She was demanding money. Said if I didn't pay, she'd kill him and make it look like an accident." I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. And then when everything started falling apart and you were being accused, I didn't know how to tell anyone without making it worse. I thought if I just paid her, she'd leave us alone. I invited her in. We sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where this nightmare had started, and we really talked for the first time in 4 years. "Brenda was right about one thing," I said. "I did keep you at a distance. Not because I didn't like you, but because I was afraid. After I lost my husband, I built walls around my heart. I thought if I didn't love too much, it wouldn't hurt so much if I lost someone again. But all I did was hurt you, and hurt my relationship with Brandon." "I tried so hard to make you like me," Ashley said, tears streaming down her face. "I thought there was something wrong with me." "There's nothing wrong with you. There's something wrong with me. Or there was. This whole experience, as horrible as it's been, taught me something. Keeping people at a distance doesn't protect you from pain. It just means you go through the pain alone." We cried together, talked for hours, started building a real relationship, not the polite surface one we'd had before. The legal proceedings took months. Brenda and Hayes were charged with dozens of counts across multiple jurisdictions. Identity theft, fraud, conspiracy, extortion, obstruction of justice, evidence tampering, computer crimes, the list went on. They both went to trial. I testified, speaking calmly and clearly about everything they'd done. So did Brandon and Ashley. So did 12 other victims from previous cases where Hayes had been the investigating officer. The juries took less than a day to convict. Detective Marshall Hayes was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Brenda Sullivan got 12 years, with a recommendation that she receive psychiatric treatment. As the bailiff led them out of the courtroom, Brenda looked at me one last time. The hatred was gone from her eyes. Now there was just emptiness. "I wanted you to hurt like I hurt," she said. "Did it work?" "Yes," I told her honestly. "But I survived, and I'm going to be happy. You never will be." The insurance money that was never real, the bank accounts were eventually unfrozen. My credit restored. The foreclosure on my house was stopped. I got my life back, piece by piece. But more importantly, I got my family back. Brandon and Ashley stayed with me for a week while we all healed together. Real conversations, real laughter, real connection. 6 months after the trial, Ashley told me she was pregnant. I cried, but this time from joy. She asked if I wanted to be in the delivery room when the baby came. "More than anything," I said. My grandson was born on a Tuesday morning in March. 8 pounds, 6 ounces, with his father's nose and his mother's eyes. When the nurse placed him in my arms, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Complete peace. Brandon stood beside me, his arm around Ashley, both of them watching me hold their son, our family. Not perfect, but real. "Thank you for not giving up," Brandon said quietly. "Thank you for coming back." Ashley rested her head on my shoulder. "What should we name him?" We discussed names for weeks, but nothing had felt right. Now, holding this tiny perfect human who represented hope and new beginnings, I knew. "What about Parker?" I suggested. "It means keeper of the park, someone who protects and preserves what matters." They looked at each other and smiled. "Parker Hayes," Brandon said. "I love it." Little Parker started fussing, and Ashley took him to nurse. Brandon went to get coffee. For just a moment, I was alone in the hospital room, listening to the soft sounds of my daughter-in-law comforting my grandson. I thought about Brenda, sitting in a prison cell, consumed by bitterness over injustices real and imagined. I thought about how easy it would be to let my own pain turn into bitterness, to let this experience harden my heart even more. But I chose differently. I chose to be grateful. For second chances. For family that fights their way back to each other. For the strength to stand up when everything's trying to push you down. For the wisdom that sometimes the worst betrayals can lead to the deepest healing. I chose to be open. To love without reservations. To trust that being vulnerable is worth the risk. To let people in completely instead of keeping them at a safe distance. I chose forgiveness. Of Brandon and Ashley for doubting me. Of myself for the walls I'd built. Even in time, of Brenda. Because holding on to hatred would only poison my own joy. And I chose joy. Real, messy, imperfect joy. The kind that comes from being fully present with the people you love, without fear of loss or pain, accepting that both will come, but that love is worth it anyway. That's what I learned from nearly losing everything. That the truth always surfaces if you're brave enough to fight for it. That family means fighting for each other even when it's hard. That trust must be given as well as earned. That the only way to really live is to love with your whole heart, walls down, risks accepted. The nurse came in to check on Ashley. Brandon returned with coffee. Parker finished nursing and fell asleep, perfect and peaceful. My phone buzzed. A text from Paulette. "How's the baby? Can't wait to meet him." I took a photo of Ashley holding Parker, Brandon leaning over them both, the three of them bathed in afternoon light from the hospital window. A family. My family. I sent it to Paulette with a message. "He's perfect. We're all perfect. Come visit soon." And we were. Not perfect in the flawless sense, but perfect in the real sense. Imperfect people who'd been through fire and came out stronger, closer, more honest with each other. That's the thing about surviving something that's meant to destroy you. If you can get through it without letting it break your spirit, without letting it turn you hard and bitter, then you come out the other side knowing what really matters. Love matters, truth matters, fighting for what's right matters. And being brave enough to be vulnerable, to let people in, to trust again after betrayal, matters most of all. I look at my grandson's tiny fingers wrapped around Ashley's thumb, and I know that's the legacy I want to leave him. Not wealth or status or a perfect life, but the knowledge that no matter what darkness comes, you can survive it with grace. That family is worth fighting for. That love is stronger than hate. That truth always wins in the end, even when it takes longer than you'd like. That morning, when Ashley's phone rang, and I saw Brandon's name, but Brandon was sitting right next to me, I didn't know I was at the beginning of the worst period of my life. But I also didn't know I was at the beginning of the best transformation I'd ever experience. Sometimes you have to lose everything to figure out what really matters. Sometimes you have to be broken down completely to rebuild yourself stronger. Sometimes the worst thing that ever happens to you leads directly to the best thing that ever happens to you. I wouldn't choose to go through it again. But I also wouldn't undo it if I could. Because on the other side of that nightmare, I found something I'd lost years ago when my husband died. I found myself. The version of me who loves without fear, who trusts without reservation, who lives fully instead of carefully, who knows that being hurt is part of being human, and that the only real tragedy is closing yourself off to avoid the hurt. Parker makes a small sound in his sleep. Ashley smiles. Brandon takes my hand, and I know, with absolute certainty, that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. The truth set me free. But it was love that brought me home. So let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a situation where everything seemed stacked against you, where the truth felt impossible to prove, but you refused to give up? How did you find the strength to keep fighting when everyone doubted you? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your stories. And if this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that truth and love can overcome even the darkest betrayals, please hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories about resilience, family, and the courage it takes to fight for what's right. Share this with someone who needs to hear that no matter how bad things get, there's always hope on the other side. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for believing that even in our darkest moments, we have the strength to survive and the capacity to forgive and the wisdom to love better than before. May you always have the courage to fight for truth, the grace to forgive those who wrong you, and the wisdom to know that being vulnerable is the bravest thing you can do. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.